Sometimes, in the middle of an ordinary moment, a thought slips through the cracks. You're sitting alone, not doing anything important, and it arrives without warning. Not a thought about your problems, not about money or relationships or what you should be doing with your life. Something older, something quieter. A feeling that existence itself is slightly wrong. Not painful, just wrong. Like you were placed here without being asked. Like the whole thing started before you could consent to it. And nobody ever asks that question out loud. We all just show up and get on with it. We build routines, we chase things, we fill the silence with noise, because the silence, when it gets loud enough, starts to say something we don't want to hear. What if being alive is not the gift we were told it was? What if beneath everything, beneath the goals and the loves and the small moments of beauty, there is something irredeemable? Most people never follow that question all the way down. They stop at the edge, feel the vertigo, and step back. One man didn't. His name was Philipp Mainländer, and what he found at the bottom of that question was so complete, so airtight, so devastatingly logical that when he finished writing it down, he had nothing left to do. On March 31st, 1876, he received the first printed copies of his life's work. That same day, he stood on a stack of those books and hanged himself. This is not a story about a man who lost hope. Hope had nothing to do with it. This is the story of a man who finished thinking, and what he concluded was this: existence is not neutral. It is not a blank canvas. It is, by its very structure, a form of suffering. And the only honest response to that truth is to leave. You've probably never heard of him. That is not an accident, but we'll get to why. First, you need to understand what he actually believed, because it's stranger and more precise and more disturbing than anything you're expecting. He was born Philipp Batz, 1841, a regular German town, a regular family. By every outward measure, he was unremarkable. He worked as a merchant, served in the military, wore the right clothes, showed up where he was supposed to show up. Nobody looking at him would have guessed what was building inside. He changed his name from Batz to Mainländer. It means, roughly, man of the mainland, already distancing himself from his origins, from his name, from the idea that he belonged anywhere. He chose celibacy, gave away his possessions, lived without attachment in the most literal sense. He wasn't performing philosophy, he was becoming it. And for years, quietly, he wrote. Have you ever had the feeling that desire is a trap? That you want something, chase it, get it, and then almost immediately feel the wanting begin again? A new job, a new relationship, a new version of yourself. And the moment you arrive, something inside you has already moved on, already hollow, already reaching. You think this is a flaw in you. It isn't. It is the mechanism of consciousness itself. Mainländer saw this before psychology had the language for it. He called it the will to die. Schopenhauer, his great predecessor, had argued that all of life is driven by a will to live, a blind, irrational force that keeps existence forward, the engine behind every desire, every ambition, every act of survival. Mainländer read this and said, no. He didn't just disagree, he inverted the entire architecture. The fundamental drive of existence, he argued, is not toward life, it is toward annihilation. Everything that exists is moving toward non-existence, not as a side effect, not as a tragedy, as the destination. The will to die is not depression, it is direction. It is the direction the universe is actually moving. And conscious life, human life, your life, is simply a longer, more elaborate path to the same end. You are not fighting to survive. You are being carried through existence on the way to nothing. Think about that slowly. Every ambition you've ever had, every relationship you've ever built, every morning you've gotten out of bed and decided to keep going, all of it, in his framework, is the universe taking the long way home. And then he said something that stops people completely. He said God is already dead. Not in Nietzsche's sense. Nietzsche meant that civilization had killed the idea of God, that modernity had made him irrelevant. Mainländer meant something far stranger. He argued that God literally existed once, a unified, complete, perfect being. But even divine existence, even that was unbearable. Even God could not tolerate the weight of being. So God made a choice. He shattered himself, deliberately, completely, into the universe. What you call reality, matter, energy, consciousness, time, the stars, the oceans, you, is not God's creation. It is God's remains. We are the fragments of a being that destroyed itself to escape existence. The entire universe is God's suicide in slow motion. Every star that burns and collapses, every species that appears and vanishes, every human life that begins and ends, all of it is God completing what He started, moving piece by piece toward the final silence He chose. Let that sit, because it changes what your life means. Not slightly, completely. You are not a soul on a journey towards something. You are a shard of something that shattered itself to get away from being. And every day you are alive, you are moving toward the completion of that act. Most people, when they feel this, when they feel that something is fundamentally off, they look for the exit. Therapy, religion, achievement, distraction, something to make the weight bearable. And those things work for a while. They work the way sleep works. They don't solve anything, they just give you the strength to carry it a little longer. Mainländer didn't want the weight to be bearable. He wanted to look at it directly. And when he did, he found something that most philosophers don't have the nerve to say. Non-existence is better than existence. Not slightly, not arguably, categorically, provably. He built this argument carefully. Consciousness requires desire. Desire is the feeling of lacking something. When desire is satisfied, you don't feel joy. You feel relief, the temporary absence of pain. That relief fades, new desire emerges, the cycle starts again. There is no state of permanent satisfaction available to a conscious being. The architecture won't allow it. Non-existence has no desire, no lack, no cycle. It is not darkness, it is not loneliness, it is simply the absence of the mechanism that produces suffering, which means it is, by its very definition, better than any state a conscious being can occupy. He wasn't writing poetry, he was making a logical argument, and from it he concluded something that society has never known what to do with. If non-existence is preferable, then the most ethical thing a person can do is move toward it, not through violence, not through harm, through celibacy, through choosing not to bring new consciousness into the world, through the quiet, willing extinction of a species that never asked to exist. David Benatar would make a version of this argument more than a century later. Mainländer was there first, and unlike Benatar, he didn't just write about it, he lived by it, and then he ended it. The question you're probably asking right now is, why have I never heard of him? That's not a rhetorical question, it has a real answer. His sister burned most of his manuscripts after his death. She believed his philosophy was spiritually dangerous. She was right. There is no Mainländer school, no Mainländer movement, no academic tradition that keeps his name alive the way it keeps Schopenhauer's alive, or Nietzsche's, or even Cicero's. He was designed to disappear, because his ideas have no escape hatch. Schopenhauer, for all his darkness, offered relief, aesthetic experience, music, asceticism, moments where the will goes quiet and something like peace is possible. Nietzsche took the same despair and turned it upside down. Create your own meaning, become who you are, say yes to life even in its suffering. Even Buddhism, which agrees that existence is suffering, offers a path out, nirvana, liberation, a practice, a direction. Mainländer offers nothing. There is no technique that fixes what he's describing, no enlightenment waiting at the end, no God coming to save you because God already destroyed himself to get away from being. He simply says, this is what is true. You can see it or you can distract yourself from it. That's the whole choice available to you. And it is precisely because there is no comfort that the philosophical world couldn't absorb him, couldn't make him safe, couldn't put him in a syllabus without also having to explain why someone might find his conclusions reasonable. So they buried him instead. But here is what no one tells you. His intuitions keep surfacing, everywhere. Thermodynamics tells us that entropy always increases, order collapses, energy disperses, systems wind down. The universe is cooling, stars are dying one by one. Physics has a name for the endpoint, the heat death of the universe, a state of maximum entropy where nothing happens forever. Mainländer called that the destination in 1876. Physics confirmed it decades later without knowing his name. His argument about consciousness and suffering appeared again in Bennett's antinatalism. His sense that civilization is a collective distraction appeared in Becker's denial of death. His feeling that existence is something that happened to us without our consent runs through Ciron, through Legati, through every thinker who is honest enough to look at the shape of consciousness and say, something about this is wrong. And yet none of them finished the way he finished. None of them stood on their own books. There is a moment, and maybe you've had it, when the noise goes quiet. Not the noise outside, the noise inside. The constant hum of wanting and planning and trying and justifying. It goes quiet. And in that silence, a question appears that you immediately try to push away. What if all of this, everything I'm doing, everything I'm building, everything I'm hoping for, is just a way of not looking at something I already know? Mainländer spent his life refusing to look away from that question. And the answer he found was not comfortable, it was complete. He didn't argue that life is mostly bad. He argued that existence, by its structure, cannot be anything else than what it is, a mechanism for generating suffering in a universe moving towards silence. And he said it plainly, without self-pity, without drama, with the quiet precision of someone who has run the calculation all the way to the end. We spend enormous energy not seeing this. We build religions around the idea that existence has a purpose beyond itself. We build self-help industries around the idea that the right habits will finally make you feel like it was worth it. We build relationships and families and legacies, not because they change the fundamental structure of what existence is, but because they make it bearable. Because the alternative, looking at it clearly, is something almost no one is willing to do. Mainländer was willing, and what he saw did not break him, it completed him. On March 31, 1876, he held his finished book in his hands. Every argument, every proof, every conclusion he had spent his life building. It was done. He had nothing left to say. He stood on a stack of those books and he left. Whether that was the most logical act in the history of philosophy or the most tragic is not something I'm going to decide for you. That's the point. He didn't leave you an answer. He left you the question. The same question you've been carrying without knowing it. The one that surfaces in elevators, in quiet rooms, and 3 in the morning when the distractions stop working. What if you already know something that you've been spending your whole life not saying out loud? Mainländer said it. He said all of it. Then he went somewhere the words couldn't follow, and the wind moved on as it always does, indifferent and infinite, remembering nothing. There is a particular kind of loneliness that has no name. Not the loneliness of being without people. You can be surrounded by people and feel it completely. It is the loneliness of suspecting something about existence that you cannot say to anyone, because the moment you say it, they look at you with concern, or they offer you a solution, or they change the subject to something safer, and you learn to carry it quietly. You learn to perform normalcy with a professionalism that would be impressive if it weren't so exhausting. Mainländer knew this loneliness. He lived inside it his entire adult life, not because he was broken, because he was paying attention. The world is very good at punishing attention. It pathologizes people who look too long in what others have agreed not to see. It calls them depressed or nihilistic or dangerous. It buries their books. It burns their manuscripts. It makes sure their names don't survive long enough to become a movement, because a movement would mean others were also paying attention. And that is the one thing the performance of existence cannot survive. Schopenhauer once wrote that the more clearly you see the world, the more unbearable it becomes. He meant this as a description of the philosopher's burden. Mainländer took it further. He didn't just describe the burden, he followed it to its conclusion. And his conclusion was not a cry for help. It was not a collapse. It was the most deliberate act of his life. He finished his argument, he published it, he held it in his hands, and then he made it true. Most of us will never have that kind of certainty about anything. We will spend our lives in the middle, not fully distracted and not fully awake, carrying the question without ever following it all the way down. And maybe that is its own kind of answer. Maybe the fact that you are still here, still reading, still carrying the weight without setting it down means something. Not in the cosmic sense, not in the sense that the universe is watching or that your pain has a purpose, but in the small, stubborn, almost animal sense that something in you keeps going anyway. Mainländer would call that the will to die taking its time. Maybe he's right, or maybe there is something in consciousness that he didn't account for. Something that chooses to stay not because existence is good, but because even in its wrongness, even in its structure of wanting and lacking and losing, there are moments. A piece of music that arrives at exactly the wrong time and somehow helps. A conversation that goes somewhere neither person planned. A morning that is simply, inexplicably bearable. He didn't write about those moments, maybe because they didn't change his arithmetic, maybe because they only made the equation harder, not easier. To feel beauty in a world that is moving towards silence, to love something you know you will lose, to stay in something you know will end. That is not resolution. That is just what being alive looks like when you stop pretending it's something else. Ecclesiastes said, "Eat your bread with joy, drink your wine with a glad heart." Not because everything is fine, because everything is not fine and you are here anyway. Mainländer could not do that. He looked at existence with complete honesty and found nothing worth the cost of admission. You might look at the same thing and find one thing, one reason, one moment that tips the scale just enough. That's not logic. It doesn't have to be. The wind moves on, indifferent and infinite, and still, you breathe. There is something the history of philosophy doesn't tell you about the people who appear in it. It tells you their ideas, it tells you their arguments. It gives you the clean version, the version that survived editing and time and the decisions of other people about what was worth preserving. It doesn't tell you what it cost them, what it costs anyone who decides to think without a safety net. Mainländer thought without a safety net from the beginning. He didn't build his philosophy as an intellectual exercise. He wasn't trying to win an argument or establish a reputation or secure a position at a university. He was trying to understand what was true. And the thing about trying to understand what is true without deciding in advance what the answer has to be is that it takes you places you did not plan to go. He started with Schopenhauer because Schopenhauer had gone further than anyone else was willing to go. Schopenhauer had looked at the will, that blind force that drives all of existence, and said it is not rational, it is not good, it does not have your interests in mind. It simply is, and it uses you. It uses every living thing to perpetuate itself, without reason, without purpose, without end. Most philosophers at that point would have found a way to soften this, would have introduced a redemptive element, a way out, a practice, a perspective shift that makes the unbearable livable. Schopenhauer himself did. He said art could quiet the will, music especially, that in moments of aesthetic experience the will goes silent and something like peace becomes possible. He said asceticism could weaken it, that the saint, the person who has renounced all desire, is closer to freedom than anyone else. He offered exits, small ones, temporary ones, but exits. Mainländer looked at those exits and said they are not exits. They are delays. The will comes back, the desire returns, the peace dissolves, and the cycle begins again. Schopenhauer's consolations, all of them, are ways of making the sentence more comfortable. They are not ways of ending it. And Mainländer had decided with the full weight of his intelligence and attention that ending it was the only honest response. Not ending your own suffering, ending the chain. Choosing not to reproduce, choosing not to add new consciousness to a universe that is already moving towards silence, choosing to let the engine wind down rather than feeding it more fuel. He called this the philosophy of redemption, not salvation, not rescue. Redemption in the oldest sense, release, liberation from something you never agreed to be part of. The word sounds almost religious. It is almost religious, because Mainländer was not an atheist. He was something stranger. He believed in God. He believed God had existed. He believed God had made a choice that cost everything. And he believed we were the consequence of that choice, living out the aftermath, carrying the weight of a decision we didn't make. There is something almost unbearably lonely about that image. Not lonely in the everyday sense, lonely in the cosmic sense. To be a fragment of something that shattered. To be alive not as an act of creation, but as an act of dissolution. To exist not because existence is good, but because the process of ending it takes time. He sat with that image his entire adult life. He didn't try to make it comfortable. He let it be what it was. And then he wrote it down as precisely and clearly as he could, so that anyone who came after him and felt the same thing would have a language for it. That is what philosophy is supposed to do. Not comfort you, not solve your problems, give you a language for what you already suspected. And what Mainländer suspected, what he eventually knew with the quiet certainty of someone who has followed an argument all the way to its end, is that the universe is not indifferent to suffering. It is structured to produce it. Indifference would be neutral. What Mainländer described is something with direction. Existence moves toward non-existence. Consciousness generates suffering. The universe is winding down toward a silence that preceded everything and will outlast everything. And we, you and I and everyone who has ever been born, are brief disturbances in that silence. Brief, suffering, forgetting, forgotten. That is not poetic language. That is his argument. And here's the thing about arguments. You can disagree with them, you can find the gaps, you can point to the moments of beauty, the experiences that make existence feel like something more than a long goodbye. And those moments are real. The beauty is real. The love is real. The morning light through a window at a particular hour when everything is quiet and the world feels briefly like it is enough. Those things exist. Mainländer knew they existed. He didn't argue they weren't real. He argued they weren't sufficient. That the architecture of consciousness is such that even those moments arrive inside a structure of suffering and longing and loss. That you cannot have the beauty without the mechanism that produces it. And the mechanism produces suffering first, always. Desire, lack, brief relief, new desire. The beauty is real, but it lives inside a trap. And he was not willing to pretend otherwise. Most of us are. Most of us have made a quiet, unspoken agreement with ourselves to not look too closely at the structure, to take the beautiful moments and hold them up against the darkness and say, see, it's worth it, it balances out. And maybe it does. Maybe the scale tips just enough. Maybe there is something in the specific texture of a particular life that makes the argument not add up the way Mainländer said it adds up. But that is a feeling, not a proof. And he was working in proof. He was working with the cold, patient logic of someone who had decided that the only honest thing was to follow the argument wherever it went, even if it went somewhere no one wanted to follow him. He finished his book. He held it in his hands. March 31st, 1876. And then he left. Not in despair, not in crisis, in completion. The argument was done. The conclusion was reached. And he was, if you follow his logic all the way, simply doing what the universe was already doing, just faster. The wind moved on, as it always does, as it always will. Long after the last book is burned and the last name is forgotten, and the last fragment of a god that wanted to die has finally come to rest in the silence it was always moving toward. The wind moved on. And somewhere, in the middle of an ordinary day, you feel it. That thing you can't name, that slight wrongness at the center of being here. And now you have a language for it, whether you wanted one or not.